Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patron, Dan W. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. There's been a lot of chatter the past 2 days about Elon possibly selling Tesla stock thanks to an 83B election option that the Rebellionaire team pointed out. I'm going to do my best to keep this simple, understandable, and actionable. I have researched this extensively the past 48 hours, and it's one of those situations where you realize there are so many moving parts and so many things we just cannot know for sure that I think the best path forward for most of us is to keep things general. And yes, I have a fairly extensive background in finance and I love the subject, so I am dangerous enough. However, I will never pretend to be a tax attorney, and really that's the role that at a minimum would be required to speak to the details of this situation with certainty. So because of that, I think the most valuable thing I can do for everyone is to clarify the key points and possible outcomes while avoiding going into the weeds where it's very easy to get lost. I just don't want you guys thinking I did not take the time to go there because I did. It's just that in doing so, I've come to the conclusion I think this time the weeds will confuse more people than it'll help, and there's enough we cannot know for certain that I'm hesitant to speak dogmatically. And I do think it's great that Bradford and Matt put themselves out there and did the research to bring this to the attention of all of us. And they are right, since Tesla's legal team took the time to explain all of this in the proxy, there's a non-0% chance this could happen. And if you do want more of the detail I'm not going to repeat here, both of their videos on the topic will be linked below. So the gist of what's going on for those that have not been clued in, this 83B election option would effectively allow Elon to pay much less in taxes by paying them up front, prepaying, if you will, rather than waiting to pay taxes when his shares vest from the new 2025 CEO Performance Award. If Elon waits and does not go the 83B route, he will likely have a significantly higher tax burden. Some people out there are arguing the window for Elon to make this election has already passed, but based on my research, I do not believe that's true, and I believe the Rebellionaire team is correct. Treasury Regulation 1.83 mandates filing not later than 30 days after the date the property was transferred. In this case, the property is Elon's shares from the new Performance Award, which were actually transferred to Elon after the ratification vote on November 6th. And this Form 4 confirms as much. So I believe Elon now has a few days to make this filing if he chooses to do so, with the deadline being December 6th. And part of why I don't want to get specific with numbers is because of one line in the proxy. It says Elon may make an election under Section 83B with respect to all or a portion of the shares subject to the 2025 CEO Performance Award. Meaning, even if Elon chooses to go this 83B route, we have no idea what portion of his Performance Award he would want to apply this to. But I will share, the Rebellionaire team did some calculations so we can have a rough idea of what kind of numbers we're talking about. If Elon does not do the 83B and instead pays taxes as the shares vest into the 2030s, his ultimate tax bill could be in the neighborhood of $350 billion if he earns all tranches of the award. On the other hand, if Elon takes the 83B route, he may owe around $15 billion in tax now that he would have to come up with from somewhere, and in the long run, he would only end up owing somewhere in the neighborhood of $240 billion, and that would include the $15 billion in tax he would have to pay now. So yes, the 83B route would likely mean Elon paying substantially less tax overall, and would mean any Tesla stock appreciation from here would be treated as capital gains rather than ordinary income. And that would likely save Elon in the neighborhood of 13% on any Tesla stock appreciation over the next decade. But then we have another line of uncertainty here. There are other ways Elon could come up with $15 billion rather than selling Tesla stock if he goes the 83B route. Elon could borrow against his shares at any of his companies rather than outright selling. So even if Elon elects the 83B, Obviously, that does not guarantee he sells Tesla stock, although I do think it's fair to argue that would be a likely outcome. So sticking with that, given Tesla stock's trading around $440 as of today, Elon would have to sell roughly 34 million shares to cover a $15 billion tax bill if he chooses the 83B election in full and not just for a portion. Somewhat of a worst case scenario in the short term. But this brings with it three problems. First, it's that we know Elon desperately wants 25% voting control at Tesla, so selling any Tesla stock now is inherently contrary to that objective, which when you go into the weeds takes you to game theory. What does Elon value more, voting control at Tesla now or paying less in taxes over the next decade? I, just like you, would be best guessing here at best. The second problem is that Elon would no longer own those 34 million shares. So if Tesla stock goes to $2,500 a share, that means Elon effectively loses out on over $70 billion of stock appreciation in that scenario. And yes, Elon would likely have to sell even more shares than that to cover taxes from the sale itself, depending on the cost basis of those shares and so on. So you can understand how this gets very complicated very quickly, and we're all just guessing at a certain point. And problem number three, if Elon goes the 83B route and prepays these taxes, if you will, and then Tesla does not hit the performance milestones, that would leave Elon in a pretty brutal spot. He would have already sold Tesla stock and paid taxes on an award that he would never actually receive in this outcome. So yes, as the Rebellionaire team pointed out, the 83B route is a risky endeavor for Elon. And then there's wording in the proxy about net settlement, which just means it's possible Elon and Tesla could structure this in a way where Elon gets less stock from the award, and in return, Tesla pays the tax bill with cash. So while I think the chances of Tesla taking $15 billion of cash and paying Elon's tax bill are low, again, it's a non-zero probability and has been laid out in the proxy. And Rebellionaire is right to give everyone a heads up here. If in January next year, when we get Tesla's Q4 financials and the cash balance is way down, we can come back to this video. And of course, the media would spin it in a terrible way, leaving out all of the good and valid reasons why Elon might choose this 83B path. And or the net settlement option, which could result in Tesla paying some or all of the tax bill that's due now. So all of this to say, if Elon ends up selling Tesla stock, we would likely get the Form 4s as soon as next week, and that could indicate Elon's taking the 83B election to some degree. If we don't get any Form 4s next week or the following, then we'll have a reasonable certainty that Elon is not selling Tesla stock for this 83B election. That does not have to mean he didn't choose the 83B route, it would just mean he's coming up with the tax bill by another means. But yes, all of this changes nothing with Tesla's fundamentals, and worst case, it would be some short-term selling pressure and a media FUD campaign for a week or so, and potentially Tesla using cash to pay Elon's tax bill, which could result in Tesla raising capital as they laid out in the proxy, which again, we would find out about in January. So while all of this discussion could be for nothing, I do think it's good that everyone is made aware of the situation and is prepared for whatever comes. So Bradford and Matt, thank you guys for the diligence and conviction to put this out there. So whether he does or does not, I have seen enough from Tesla this past decade to trust his and Tesla's judgment, and it really boils down to risk tolerance and value prioritization that I just cannot speak to. And I think ultimately for me to say which way would be better for Tesla and Tesla shareholders is a bit reckless, as both paths have legitimate pros and cons over varying timelines. So again, my only hope here is that you all have a bit better understanding of the current situation, you know that it's out there, and you're all prepared for whatever filings or stock sales we may or may not see in the weeks ahead. So we'll see if Elon holds off on paying taxes and kicks the can down the road, but if that's what you've been doing when it comes to trying AG1, now is the time to change that. They have a new holiday offer that gets you the welcome kit, flavor samples of AG1 and AGZ, vitamin D3, K2, and a hat for first-time subscribers. And don't forget, they offer a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. And truly, guys, I cannot thank you all enough for trying AG1 for yourself or grabbing it for family and friends over the years. It's been a huge help to keeping Electrified sustainable. So sincerely, thank you. And for what it's worth, when my extended family found out AG1 sponsored the channel, they were all asking me for some. So I think it would make a great holiday gift if you need ideas. Plus, this time of year, I think it's more important than ever to support your immune health with family gatherings and travel. It can be so easy to get off track. And as I always say, this is not meant to be a meal replacement, but it's a great way to support balanced nutritional habits, which over a lifetime makes all of the difference. Plus, with the new year looming, it can be a great time to build new healthy habits. And for me, AG1 has become a quick, easy, clean way to get a lot of nutritional goodness at once. So if you want to grab all of those freebies I mentioned, which is a $126 value for new subscribers, you can use my link in the description below, drinkag1.com/electrified, or you can use the QR code on the screen. Cheers. When it comes to the Optimus videos we got yesterday, I think it's very important everybody understands this is only version 2.5, so everything we're seeing here is not the latest and greatest that Tesla has. And you guys know I've said many times I will not overreact to robot demos, even from Tesla. And I do think that Optimus running at this point is less important than Optimus walking quickly in most settings. Scott Walter initially did some calculations estimating that Optimus was jogging at about 5 miles per hour, but he has since redid those calculations and is now saying the speed was closer to 8.5 miles per hour. But as we always say with these demos, they bring a lot more questions than answers. For example, how consistent is Optimus running? Would all 6 Optimi that are leaning against the wall, likely on their charging docks, be able to run 8 miles an hour at the same time without falling? What type of distance can Optimus run at these speeds for? How many takes were required to get Optimus to run successfully across the camera screen? So you get the picture, but my point is I do think it's more important we see Optimus walking around 3 miles an hour, aka efficiently in most factory settings. In the short term, that's most likely far more important than Optimus being able to run over 8 miles an hour. And I know it's just meant to demonstrate overall capability, and it is very impressive in its own right. But the primary question always boils down to how much do these demos actually translate and tell us about how close we are to consistent, reliable, useful work. And I don't know about you, but from this video alone, yes, I'm encouraged and excited, but I still have no idea how to answer that question. But I will say I am getting the sense that Tesla is making pretty incredible progress behind the scenes and continues to keep most everything close to the chest. And I do have a feeling when they unveil Optimus V3, they are going to blow a lot of people away. I maintain production timelines to start will be slower than expected as Tesla builds nearly the entire supply chain itself, but we need to keep that separate from what Optimus is capable of. If you need the proof this was legit running with a flight phase, meaning completely off the ground even momentarily, here's the screenshot. And just watching the video, I think we would all agree it's very smooth and natural. Of course, plenty of people would want to compare this to other humanoids, but don't forget, many others don't have the chops to bring anything to production at scale, and in the end, that's all that will matter. I really liked one line that Phil Beisel shared. He said, "Running is one of those composite behaviors that exposes what's under the hood. It requires a large set of subskills: balance control, real-time joint coordination, ground contact prediction, internal state estimation, and they all have to be packaged into one stable policy. The fact that Tesla can now deliver this as a single coherent behavior says the underlying architecture is maturing, and that's the important part." And as we've known for a while, it all boils down to the hand, so this Optimus has gloves on, likely to avoid anything getting pinched and or to conceal what Tesla's up to, even though this is very likely an outdated hand design. And then these videos came from the NOR IPS 2025, which is the 39th annual conference on neural information processing systems, which is an event focused on advancing research in AI, machine learning, and neuroscience. This one is in San Diego, California, and runs until December 7th. If you go back to Tesla's AI Day in 2021, you may remember this screen showing the Tesla bot before Tesla even had a prototype, where Elon said the speed would be up to 5 miles an hour. Elon said he would limit the speed for safety reasons, but if Scott's calculations are correct, we are already ahead of that benchmark, for better or for worse. Talking about the Optimus hand, which does include the forearm, Elon did misspeak in that Ron Barron interview. He did later correct that, saying he meant to say there would be 50 actuators total for each Optimus, 25 in each forearm and hand. Human hands have 27 degrees of freedom, so we know Tesla will want to get as close to that as possible, and so far, everything we've seen, the way Tesla is building this is close to a 1-to-1 ratio for actuators to degrees of freedom. Not perfectly 1-to-1, but a loose rule of thumb. Pun intended. So remember, just basic math, this means that for Tesla to make 1 million Optimi, they would need 50 million actuators just for the hands. So I just think the slowly and then all at once mantra that we've talked about for FSD will apply to Optimus to some degree as well, specifically when it comes to production. And I will admit, it's mesmerizing watching these hand and finger movements both in the glove and exposed, but how capable are these and the next generation hands? How much weight can they hold? What's the smallest object they can manipulate? How sensitive are the hands to different temperatures? So don't get me wrong, I will always love getting a peek behind the curtain, and I do think once we get the V3 demo, we will learn beyond a shadow of a doubt that there really isn't any actual competition for Optimus despite the optics, in a very similar sense to what's going on with FSD. But I just want to be a voice slowing things down when it comes to commercial availability timelines. And Ashok said, if you're at NER IPS, try driving around in our synthetic world. If you happen to be in the area, I do think that would be a pretty cool experience. Which leads me to what Phil Truby said, as I believe he was at NER IPS and Daniel Kurek from Tesla gave a talk about FSD and Optimus. He said Tesla believes their FSD model is a huge head start for training Optimus. They're training Optimus using a small fleet of Optimi, and they think they can gather enough information from bot fleet training to get performant bots. They have leveraged the FSD world model they've built to build a world model for Optimus, and believe their world model is performant enough to train Optimus in. And this is arguably one of the most important questions for Tesla's Optimus program. How fast will all of the learnings that Tesla gathered on the real world data FSD side and building those world models to simulate reality as closely as possible, how quickly will all of that transfer to Optimus? Because it's definitely going to shorten the learning curve. The question is, to what degree? And serendipitous timing, today the Trump administration is now planning to accelerate development of the robotics industry. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has been meeting with robotics industry CEOs and is all in on accelerating the sector's growth. The administration is considering issuing an executive order on robotics next year. The Commerce Department said, "We are committed to robotics and advanced manufacturing because they're central to bringing critical production back to the US." The Department of Transportation is reportedly preparing to announce a robotics working group, possibly before the end of the year. There's also talks of a National Robotics Commission, but I'll be honest, hearing that, all I can think of is more red tape. For now, we do not know what this executive order could look like, but my hope would be that it would include some level of funding and streamlining the regulatory approvals. And when I say funding, I do not mean failed programs like NEVI for EV charging, but rather production incentives like we see with domestic battery manufacturing. Speaking of this administration, we are all here patiently waiting for an update on the federal framework for autonomous vehicles. The reviews for Tesla's demo drives across the EU continue to pour in with overwhelming positivity. Julien Cadeau got to do a test in France, and he said it's mind-blowing both for the safety and for the humanity of the choices. But most importantly, guys, in the comments, he was asked if it's different than the autopilot they've come to know, and he said it's incomparable, it's not the same language. So this awakening that we've been talking about now for months is finally starting to happen. For many of us, it's laughable that people think autopilot and FSD are basically the same. You'll remember Meet Kevin saying that just a few weeks ago. But to those that actually know what's going on, that could not be further from the truth. And the faster more people realize that, the better it will be for Tesla. This video was shared by Lampi di Tesla saying, Italian narrow roads, how can FSD handle them? Now, as I watch this video, I just sit here and think, what in the world was the designer of this road in Italy doing? This legitimately looks like it should be a one-lane road, but apparently cars go both ways with no line in the middle. But even around these odd turns, FSD seems to be handling it incredibly well. Rustavi said in Germany, a Tesla on FSD driving itself perfectly through a tiny village like it's been doing it for years. No hands, no stress, just smooth, confident autonomy. Mind officially blown. It's also being reported that Tesla has hosted the mayor of Rome for an FSD demo drive. So that's great for visibility. News outlets across Rome will likely pick this up. And just one quick aside, if you see posts with these M dashes everywhere, it most likely means AI was used somewhere in the process, which is not inherently a bad thing, but just a quick pro tip, if you don't want people giving you accusations of having AI write your posts, I would be careful with these M dashes. At least for me, every time I see them, I think at the very least AI refined the post, if not outright wrote it altogether. And for the latter point, contrary to popular belief, I do think that should be frowned upon. And if you go to the FSD ride-along page for Germany, you'll see these demo rides are now being offered through the end of March 2026. So rather than ending this year, it looks like they've been extended for a full quarter, which is something I don't think Tesla would do if the demand for it wasn't higher than they were expecting. Another anecdote, Raphael said, just came back from my FSD demo drive. It was insane, confident, smooth. I could say it drives better than the average driver. If people will have this tech in their car, they will not want to go back to a non-self-driving car again. It's a game changer. And Keys Roland's chap shared this video of FSD in Europe.
Avec une voiture qui vient à contresens. Maintenant, quelle va être sa décision? Elle s'arrête.
Dr. John Slotkin had a guest essay in the New York Times about autonomous vehicle safety, and he highlighted Waymo safety data. So a bit more evidence of all of this going mainstream. He said, in medicine, when a treatment shows this level of benefit, we stop the trial early. Continuing to give patients the placebo becomes unethical. When an intervention works this clearly, you change what you do. In driving, we are all the control group. Cities like DC and Boston are blocking deployment, and I would add countries across the EU. And cities are not the only forces mobilizing to slow this progress. It's time we stop treating this like a tech moonshot and start treating it like a public health intervention that will save lives. As I've said before, I firmly believe if every car on the road was a Tesla that had to use FSD in its current form, the annual death rate from auto accidents would plummet to near zero instantly. Trent was asking if Tesla owners can get some more camera heating, especially for snowy conditions. Yoon Tasai, Tesla engineer, said, noted, we do actively work on improving thermal management for winter, making sure each joule is channeled to the right place. I will say though, I don't think it's always more heating that is required, because if you get salt or dirt on there, heat's not really going to be the solution. And I said there's a reason I don't say autonomy is solved. I watch an unhealthy amount of FSD content and try to get outside of the few main accounts. There are still navigation problems and some jittery behavior, even with 14.2.1 on the highway. Some people are having parking lot regressions. And this was not my experience, other than the navigation issues, but there's a reason I made it clear my experience will not be representative for everyone. So we are painfully close, but there's a reason Tesla still has safety monitors, a fleet size that is quite small, and is not yet offering unsupervised FSD for any customers. It's because it's not actually solved yet. But I did have another hour of snow driving in my Model 3 with true summer tires, and it was sublime. I will include a short video I already shared over on X at the end of this video for those that are not on X. An unfortunate update, I tried to include the video I shared on X in this video, but the music I used is copyrighted. So if you want to see that video of my hill testing of FSD and manual driving in the snow, I'll have that link below. The Trump administration is set to announce new fuel efficiency standards for cars in a bid to undo requirements it has assailed for driving up the cost of new cars. Today, Trump said we are officially terminating Biden's ridiculously burdensome, horrible actually, CAFE standards that imposed expensive restrictions. Biden wanted automakers to hit about 50 miles per gallon by 2031. Trump, on the other hand, is only requiring cars to get about 34 miles to the gallon by 2031. The Trump administration is saying that this should help with new vehicle affordability. For now, this is still just a proposal and is subject to a public comment period, but it could be finalized in early 2026. In short, what this means is legacy automakers can now prioritize their most profitable gas-powered trucks and SUVs without having the fear of non-compliance penalties. They're saying new cars should fall by about $1,000 on average because these companies will be investing less in EVs. Which just furthers what we've been saying for months. Legacy auto will continue to pull back from electric vehicles. And again, the regulatory credit revenue that Tesla's been earning is not going to go to zero overnight, but it will be phased down dramatically over the next few years. Tesla has privately cautioned the UK government that loosening EV regulations would affect fully electric sales and threaten the country's climate targets. Tesla said it was essential for EV sales that the government did not introduce new loopholes known as flexibilities. So EV rules are being loosened not just in the US, but the UK as well. In partnership with Tesla, Del Mar College has launched a chemical operations internship, and the first cohort starts this fall at Tesla's lithium refinery and cathode production factory in Austin. The internship offers early career opportunities for students to gain industry experience while developing their expertise through higher education. Waymo announced it will now be testing in 4 new cities: St. Louis, Missouri, Pittsburgh, PA, Baltimore, Maryland, and Philadelphia, PA. But technically, Waymo has been testing in Philly since this summer. They just said after a period of manual testing, we recently shifted to autonomous testing with specialists behind the wheel. So the service is not yet live in any of these cities, but testing is underway. As I've said for a while, there are plenty of examples out there of Waymo vehicles exhibiting poor driving behavior, most recently driving right through a crossfire. Per the usual, Waymo gets off the hook scot-free, but we know what would happen if a Tesla were to do something like this. Waymo also announced they are now fully autonomous in Dallas, meaning no human driver at the wheel. And going forward, anytime somebody brings up Waymo with me, this will be my response. Yoon Tasai said there's autonomy, and then there's autonomy at scale. Remember that Jaguar rebrand that drew plenty of criticism? Well, the design boss behind that has been fired. Jerry McGovern was escorted out of the office earlier this week. Green the Only said it looks like Tesla is changing or upgrading cameras in some new cars produced. Hardware 4 to date used exterior cameras with IMX963. Now they might potentially have something called IMX00N. It's a little too early to say exactly what's happening here. These are both likely Sony cameras, and the new 00N could just be a placeholder that Tesla has in the code right now. So I'm not sure what type of upgrade this could be, but I'll keep an eye out. Tesla Chan gave us this chart as an update of Tesla's continued positive momentum in South Korea. Of course, Q4 is not over yet, but for 2025, Tesla has far and away outperformed the entirety of 2024. Last year, Tesla failed to do 30,000 sales in South Korea, and this year it looks like Tesla has a real chance of hitting 60,000 for the year, effectively doubling sales year over year. Joe Tetmeyer shared some images of a bunch of Cybercab castings in Austin. He said it looks like the rollover crash testing is being set up at the facility just east of the cathode plant. So it appears like everything is still on track for Cybercab production starting in April. Joe also said Cortex 2 is now having the chiller plant piers, platforms, and conduit set up ahead of the actual machinery and components. He said we might start seeing Cortex 2 start getting the computer cabinets delivered and installed in the first quarter of 2026 at this rate of progress. On LinkedIn, Jason Guys has announced that he's starting a new chapter with Tesla on the business development team for the Tesla Semi. He said, "This role brings together everything I've done at Hendrickson, Axletech, Navistar, and ABB E-Mobility. Real certified trucks running with customers, a new production plant nearing completion, MCS charging validation moving fast. Tesla is delivering, and I'm ready to contribute. Electrifying freight isn't a concept anymore, it's happening, let's get to work." And he's leaving his prior role at Windrose. There, he built the North America structure during market entry, led operations, supply chain, HR, purchasing, and vehicle readiness, directed charging integration, interoperability, and testing. Another nice talent pickup for Tesla for the Semi program that we often sleep on with everything going on with FSD and robotics. Tesla's hiring for a senior display optical engineer, someone that will work on LCD and OLED display system development at the component and system level. And they said specifically they'll be working on displays for Tesla vehicles' infotainment system. So perhaps with unsupervised right around the corner, Tesla wants to improve the quality of the screens. We got the wholesale figure for Giga Shanghai for November. It came in at 86,700 units, a nice jump from the reading in October that was under 62,000. This reading is also up over 10% from last November. And zooming out, looking at the wholesale figure year to date through November, Giga Shanghai is now only down 8.3% year over year. So with this November reading, Tesla has closed the gap a bit. And yes, this is the second highest wholesale reading this year, second behind only September. Today, Mary Barra gave a talk with Andrew Sorkin, and she said, "Biden was crediting me, and I said, actually, I think a lot of that credit goes to Elon and Tesla. You know me, Andrew, I don't want to take credit for things." So Mary's a bit late with this statement. She seemed to be taking that and enjoying that credit years ago. But better late than never, she's now admitting Biden was praising the wrong person. Tesla stock closed the day at $446.74, up 4.08%, while the NDX was up 0.2%. The volume was 2% above the average. Don't forget, check out AG1 linked below for those interested. Now would be the time if you've been putting it off. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X linked below. And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.